reflection on God's plan. Have you ever stopped to wonder what God's plan is for your life and for the future of this world that we live in? Have you ever allowed your mind to think beyond the past or the present moment to ask yourself these types of questions? How many of you out there have your lives theoretically on hold right now because you're still waiting for the answers that unfortunately never comes? Well, there is no clearer statement or answer, if you will, in the Bible, my friends, concerning God's primary goal for our future and the future of this earth than Matthew 24, verse 14, which tells us that history, as it relates to human history and that of the earth, is about the kingdom of God and its proclamation among the people. It says in the Bible, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. It says, and then shall the end come. This means that when the kingdom has drawn all of its members from every single people group, Jesus is going to announce the end of the world or history, his story as we know it. See, as believers, we don't just get to drift through his story like, what's going on right now is all that there will be or all that there is. We have been given a responsibility, a great responsibility and privilege of pointing people to this reality and to Christ, who is the sum of all things. In fact, in Colossians chapter 1, verse 16 through 18, it says this: for by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth. It says visible and invisible. Now, wait a minute. This means whether you see it or not, whether you've heard it or not, or even know it or not. The text begins by saying that all of what you know as this present reality, God not only created it for Jesus, but he was also instrumental in its construction. Now, how do I know? Because it goes on to say, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, in other words, kingdoms. It says all things were created by him and for him. Verse 17 says, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist. And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the first fruit or firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have preeminence. What does it say? Preeminence. Now, this means that because Jesus was there in the creation of the earth and everything that pertained to it and us, he also gets to say what happens to it and what happens to us. See, I want to ask you this question, and I want you to be honest with me today. Where is your life pointing? Is it consistent with the reality of these scriptures that God has made plain through the life of his son? Selah. Think on that for a second. Is your life headed towards the direction of godly success, or is it headed towards godly failure due to your lack of spiritual reality? Now, the beauty of history, or his story, meaning, God's story, the beauty of all of this is in his omniscience and God's omniscience, which is the state of infinite wisdom and knowledge. In God's omniscience, he provided every single one of us with the opportunity to get involved with our own individual progress towards the climax of our own history. And I don't know about you, but this gives me great joy. Yeah, it does. Because even though God knows everything about how the story ends, his preeminence and his divine supremacy allows human vessels to be co-laborers in both his plans for this world and the plan for our own individual futures. Yeah, just like he did with his son Jesus Christ in the beginning. This is why everything that we do must be for the building up of God's kingdom and the spreading of the gospel. We can't leave that out either. Why? Because in this kingdom, this is the only kingdom or realm where you can enter into just as you are. Meaning you don't have to be perfect in this kingdom. You don't have to be faultless in this kingdom. And you don't have to be flawless or have everything under control in this kingdom. In fact, this is the only kingdom, saints of the living God, in existence that will accept a person who really doesn't belong, and by the end of their conversion, make you feel like you've always belonged. See, I know this for a fact. And I know it because I auditioned for some of these kingdoms of this world. And I never got the part or even felt like I really belonged or was even accepted. And I finally realized why. I finally came to grips why I could not just fit in. Can I talk to you for a moment? The reason why I never felt like I belonged, and I wrestled with this for a while, but the reason why I never felt like I was accepted or I belonged was because God wouldn't allow me to. It had nothing to do with anybody else. God wouldn't allow me to fit in. In fact, if you really want to know the truth, it was never his will for any of us to be accepted or to put our trust in a temporary kingdom in the first place, especially since his eternal one is his goal for our lives. See, I believe that he did it this way because if everything was so wonderful on this worldly side, then why would anyone choose to live on the Lord's side? See, I like the way Dr. Phil puts it. He just simply asks a question, and he asks a question, and it's so simplistic that it skips past every excuse, every underlying explanation, and it gets you to come to grips with your own reality. Can I tell you what that is? He simply asked the question, get this, is it working for you? In other words, is your life all that wonderful? Because if it is, hear me today, then why are you here? If everything was so great, then why are you asking for help? And God is asking that same question today. Is life working out for you? Or do you need his help? Because if you do like most of us, then it could be because God's plan for whoever I'm talking to today is greater and more beneficial than the plan that you or this world has for your own lives. And if this is the case, then the only way to benefit from that plan, God's plan for your life, is to become involved in its proclamation. Why? Because we simply know something that the kingdoms of this world doesn't know. We know how the story ends. Not so that we can gloat or so that we can keep, this type of knowledge to ourselves. We have access to this type of information so that we can humbly proclaim the good news of the gospel and spread it throughout the whole earth, so that others will see the goodness of God and glorify his son for including us in his story. And so, as I wrap this thing up, this reflection on God's plans that I've been talking to you for the last few moments now about, the kingdoms of this God and how God accepts you and how he does not want you being accepted by the world, which is why you're running into so much trouble, because God don't want it to be perfect on this side. He wants you to spend more time on the spiritual side. So, my friends, this is why a person should find it hard to settle with the world's status quo. The good news about the kingdom of God must be preached so that those who need to change kingdoms will not only hear it from us, but they will see his kingdom in us and make the decision before the Lord. In our text in Matthew 24 verse 14 says, the end shall come. The sum of all things, history, a reflection on God's plan. Until next time, saints, prosper. God bless you.